A king once saw a man he mistook for something not human. He sat alone by a river in the skin of a panther, weeping. When the king's soldiers rode out to seize him, he struck them down and was gone before they hit the ground. Everyone who saw him remembered the same thing, not the violence, the grief. A warrior that strong should not have been able to break like that. This is the story of who he was, and of the one man who went after him, looked at a grief that size, and chose to carry half of it. It happened at the edge of a kingdom ruled by a king named Rostevan, in a world of caravan cities, mountain fortresses, and distances no map could promise to cross. Rostevan loved the hunt. One morning, riding out with his men, he came to the river and saw the stranger in the panther skin, weeping in the high grass. He sent riders to bring the man in. The stranger looked up, mounted a black horse, and put them down without anger, the way you brush rain from your sleeve. Then there was no sign he had ever been there. The king rode home carrying a grief that wasn't his and could not put it down. The king's daughter was Tinatin, newly raised to the throne, and the knight Avtandil loved her past all reason. She called him to her in private. "Find the man in the panther's skin," she told him. "Learn what broke him. Bring the truth back to me." She did not pretend it would be easy. 3 years, she said, and if you fail in 3 years, come home anyway. Avtandil was the finest knight of that court. He had a throne of his own waiting, an army, a name worth keeping. He set all of it down and rode out, and he told no one where the road would take him, because he did not know. He searched for nearly the whole of those 3 years. He crossed countries, mountains, forests, the dry waste country where no one keeps a road. The court wore off him. His fine clothes thinned. The soft hands of a prince went hard, and he learned to read the land the way other men read letters. He had almost run out of time when the first real clue reached him. 2 travelers at the edge of a wasteland, with a story about a wild man near a cave in the rock who killed beasts with his hands and spoke to no one. Avtandil turned his horse toward the one place everyone else was riding away from. At the cave, he found a woman, Asmat, gaunt and watchful over a small fire. She had served someone great once. Now, she kept watch over the ruin of a man. "Leave before he comes back," she told him. "He kills any stranger he finds." Avtandil stayed. Near nightfall, the panther-skinned man came down out of the dark, and Avtandil watched a wild animal cross his path, and watched the man break it apart without slowing his step, and then sink down where he stood, shaking, not from the fight, but from something the fight had not touched. Avtandil understood it in that moment. This was not a wild man. This was a great one, taken apart by grief. When the two of them finally faced each other, ready to kill, it was that look of recognition that stopped them both. His name was Tariel. He had not always been this. In another life, he had been the brightest commander of a great kingdom, a prince trusted with armies, the kind of man a court is built around. He began to tell his story by the fire, and as he spoke, you could see the man he used to be standing inside the wreck of the man he had become. There was a woman, Nestan-Darejan, daughter of his king, raised so close to him that they were nearly grown before they understood what they actually were to each other. She was lightning in the shape of a girl. They loved in secret, the way the young still believe a secret can hold. By the fire, Tariel stopped. Avtandil said nothing. He had come a long way to hear a stranger's reason for weeping, and he was beginning to understand he would carry it home inside himself whether he wanted to or not. Her father had a throne to secure, and the throne marries before a heart does. He chose a foreign prince for her, and gave Tariel the task of helping arrange the wedding. Nestan refused to be traded like a treaty. She sent for Tariel and told him plainly, "If you mean to have me, stop weeping and act." So he acted. He cut the suitor down and took the city before it knew it had been taken. Here Tariel's voice gave out. He sat with his hands open in front of him, looking at them as if they belonged to someone he used to know. Then, he said, she was gone. In the confusion, her own aunt, terrified of what the king would do, had her carried off in the night and set adrift beyond anyone's reach. By the time Tariel went looking, there was no trail. He searched the length of the world and found nothing, and somewhere in all that nothing, his mind let go of the rope. He told Avtandil how he came by the skin. He had been wandering when he found a lion and a panther together in a field, circling each other the way two lovers circle before they touch. He stood and watched, and it undid him. The lion was every fierce thing he had ever been, the panther every fierce thing he had loved. Then the lion turned and struck her, and Tariel could not bear the sight of it. He killed the lion with his hands. And then he went to the panther and gathered her up to hold her, because for one breath she was Nestan, and the animal, terrified, tore at him, and in his grief he killed her too. He sat with the dead panther a long while. He had destroyed the last thing left in the world that carried her likeness. He skinned it and dressed himself in it, and he had worn it ever since, the final image of his love carried on his own back. He chose the empty country after that, because in the empty country no one offers you comfort that isn't true. Avtandil had come to bring a story home to a queen. He left with something heavier. He told Tariel, "Your loss is mine now. I will not go back to my own happiness while yours is sitting in a cell somewhere in the world." This is the strange center of the whole tale. The civilized man did not stand at the edge of the wild and call the broken one back to safety. He walked in. He made the other man's ruin his own address. In that world, they held that a friend should spare a friend nothing. Not wealth, not the throne, not the self. And Avtandil meant it down to the letter. The two of them swore brotherhood. And from that hour, fate had a much harder problem to solve. Now there were two, and soon three. Avtandil's road had already crossed that of another sworn friend, a warrior king named Pryden, who had once seen a strange ship at sea carrying a captive of impossible beauty. One friend had glimpsed the prisoner from a distance. Another witness had stood close enough to be certain. Slowly the fragments pointed at one place. Nestan-Darejan was alive. She was held in Kajeti, the fortress of the Kajis, a people the world took for sorcerers. Their stronghold stood on bare rock, ringed by 10,000 soldiers, and no army in living memory had taken it. Everyone agreed it could not be done. The three of them decided to do it anyway. They did not have an army. They had 300 men and a plan built on knowing exactly what each of them was for. Tariel would be the breach, the first through the wall, the shock the defenders would spend their attention on. Avtandil would already be inside before that, moving quietly toward the one cell that mattered. Pryden would run the diversion and hold the road out, so that whatever they took from Kajeti, they could leave with. And one more thing the soldiers of Kajeti did not know. Nestan-Darejan had not spent those years waiting to be rescued. She had refused every attempt to make her belong to someone else, smuggled out word whenever a hand could carry it, and stayed defiant long after she had any reason to believe anyone was coming. When the wall broke, she was not a prize being lifted out. She was the fourth person in the fight. Tariel went through the front of the assault like a man returned from the dead, because for the first time in years he had a reason to live past the next minute. And the fortress that could not be taken was taken before its defenders understood the shape of what was happening to them. They found her in a high cell. Nestan-Darejan, older, paler, unbroken, looked up at the impossible sight of the man she had stopped letting herself expect, standing in a doorway he had no right to have reached. What had altered fate was not a god, and not a single hero with a destiny stamped on him at birth. It was this: people who refused to let each other fall, and who spent everything they had to prove it. Tariel went into the wild because he lost her. Avtandil went into the wild because he would not lose Tariel. Grief can carry a person clean off the edge of the world. Only another person, walking in after them, can carry them back. They went home to thrones and weddings and long lives. But those were only the rewards. The victory had already happened, back in the cave, the moment one man looked at another's ruin and decided to call it his own.